There's a misconception of how we perceive the body in golf. Because we see ourselves generally from face on, we are typically picturing a 2D image. We're not looking at the depth perspective. And so this constrains us severely. For example, if we use these sticks and we take this segment here, so we've got the sternum, you'll often hear that referenced, keep the sternum over the ball or in front of the ball or behind, don't go behind the ball with the sternum, can't strike the ball with the sternum behind the ball. Okay, maybe not, but we're going to see. And so when we move in, we want to be giving ourselves the opportunity to see this in a different light. So we're not just thinking about where my sternum is, where my shoulders are, where my hips are. There's so much more to this, okay? And we're going to start off first of all with a little reference point on the floor. So you can actually see here what is taking place, and it might not be what we think is taking place. So for example, if I put that on my sternum, I'm going to rotate my sternum, and somebody might say, oh my God, you can't go over there, because look now, the sternum's so far back. Okay, in fact, Marcus, when you strike the golf ball, you can't possibly have your sternum back here, okay, because it's behind the ball. So you're gonna fat it, okay, because the swing centre is behind the ball, okay? Well, let's have a look at the torso segment. So if I take this stick here and this stick here, where these two meet is the cross-sectional centre of this segment. Now notice where that centre is when I rotate. It's not over here, that's for sure. It's actually, I would probably suggest, not far away from where I started. But actually, perception of this from your viewpoint there is, I'm over here, way behind the ball, when actually I'm probably not even far enough behind the ball to create enough momentum, because we need to move the body to move the club, and what parts of the body we move is really important. So here, now I can allow myself to move. Now that would be more, if you like, centred if you like, but look where the sternum is. It's over here. From that camera angle, this would look to be behind the ball. But in reality, yes, it is if you say sternum. But if we're talking about the torso, I'm probably not far away from being centred. Another golfing term. So actually, look what happens if I think about keeping my sternum in line with the ball. Now look where my centre is. Actually now I'm over here. We then hear things like reverse weight shift, reverse pivot. You're not transferring your weight. Then you try and transfer your weight. Oh, and now you're sliding. So now you're swaying. Yeah, but I've got to keep centred. So actually now the cure becomes the cause. What we perceive to be a swing fix is actually what they all talk about as swing faults. So we're talking now in riddles, because one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and this becomes a dark web. What we need to do is allow ourselves to move with a lot more freedom, and you know what? See what happens. See what this results in with a club. It might hit the ground back here, but then what happens if I actually allow myself to move? Now, look at this, if I allow myself to move forward. So this may look like I'm way forward of the golf ball, but actually taking that segmental centre, I'm not that far forward at all. But what this is doing, this is creating momentum, and what momentum creates is force. So now I'm creating speed, I'm creating a natural swinging action with minimal effort. I'm not having to work hard to move this golf club, because I'm moving and then I'm allowing it to swing. I'm moving and stopping. When I stop, this thing swings. So suddenly now, the golf club becomes more of a swinging action than a hitting action. So we're not hitting, we're swinging, because we're allowing our body to move. And it's a golf swing, not a golf hit. So just by the nature of the terminology we're using, golf swing, that suggests moving the body to create a swing. That suggests that we have to explore where we're moving and allow ourselves to move. So just using that as a 0-0 coordinate, if you like, we're actually probably way in front. I could go further. So when you hear these terms of 80% left, 80% right with weight or pressure, or yeah, this is all relevant, but what about 81%, 82%, 85%, 78%, okay? Why 80-20, okay? And what's right for you might not be right for somebody else. In an effort to constrain this in a more what we perceive to be repeatable way for consistency, what we do is we constrain it even more, because suddenly now I've got to sway because I didn't allow myself to move. And now I've got a steep shoulder plane, so now my shoulders are steep. And when I rotate, now I'm steep here, and now when I turn, I'm across the golf ball. So now I've got a slice. I could look at a million more videos now on slice, over the top, steep swing plane, steep shoulder plane, hip rotation, sway, weight transfer. Where do we stop? But more importantly, where do we start? So first of all, let's explore some movement. Very simply, stand next to a wall behind you. I'd say probably a foot length away. Depends how long or short your arms are, to be honest, because we're just going to turn and touch the wall. But just assume a kind of golf posture. Could be stood up straight if you like. We're just exploring rotation. But I'd suggest going to some flexions. Okay, have a little jump, and when you land, just hold that place there. Not under tension. Let yourself move, because we're about to rotate. And what we're going to do, we're going to touch the wall with the fingertips. So I'm going to use my left hand first. I'm going to use my lead arm, go to my trail side. So I'm just going to rotate to my right and touch the wall behind me. And just explore that rotation. Now that's, for me, that's feeling quite tight. So I'm going to move a bit closer to the wall, make life a bit easier. Cool, now I can rotate. And just recognise what's moving. Look how much the hips have had to move. Look at the knees. And I can feel a weight shift already. Look at where my torso is. And all I'm doing is rotating. If you can't touch the wall, by the way, don't worry, just get closer. And if you still can't touch the wall, we're all different shapes and sizes. We've all got different limitations. Okay, don't even touch the wall, but just move towards it and find out how much you can move. If you're moving over here to touch the wall, you're having to go down, then maybe that is going to make life more difficult to swing the club. But only maybe, because it might be perceived that being over here might hit the ground. But it all depends what we're going to do with the rest of our movement. What are we like going this way? Well, there's plenty of movement this way, because I'm looking at rotation here. We're not really looking at too much flexion extension, we're just looking at rotation. So what's it like to rotate? So just rotating, touch the wall behind you, and imagine now you've got a golf club in your hand. And then just have a look down now, just tip forward, just tilt the upper body and have a look. So you're getting a feel of what it's like to rotate. Okay, following through, just touch the wall here. Imagine you've got a club in your hand now, bring the foot up, move into a lower body kind of finish position. Imagine you've got a club on your shoulder. Okay, so we've got ample movement here to make a golf swing to a degree, whatever degree our flexibility, mobility allows us. And if we need to move, what you might find is when you actually were to touch the wall, you might need to lift your heel, you might need to go onto your tiptoe. Fine, okay, because you wouldn't restrict that if the task was touching the wall. So why restrict that in a golf swing? Because to rotate the body, that is a necessary component for this movement pattern to rotate. So let's not restrict that. But if you've been told to keep your feet still, keep the lower body still, stay grounded, stay connected, support the swing, support the upper body with the lower body being stable, maybe that's making life more difficult and I can't actually rotate. So I can't actually go into this place, which is going to allow me to create more speed. The game's much easier with speed. And we all generally possess enough movement to create a level of speed to play proficiently. So explore what you need to do. How do I need to move my lower body to facilitate this ease of upper body movement? It will be different when you flex forward. There is a different tensioning on the body. Posturally, it tensions us, it restricts the joints in a slightly different way. So I do want you to explore it in a more of a golf posture now and rotate. You might find now that the lower body has to be a bit more active. You have to start using the lower body more to allow you to maintain some level of flexion here, because it's easier in an upright position because we haven't got this tensioning like I mentioned posturally. But we still have the ability to move and rotate. We're just having to use the lower body. So this highlights how much we actually have to let the lower body move to facilitate the rotation of the upper body. But if we've been keeping our sternum centered, okay, and restricting our hips, keeping the feet still, keeping the head still, keeping the head down, all this tensioning through positional focus of movement, we're just essentially constraining, tightening up, tensioning, locking out all these degrees of freedom that potentially are there to be recruited just by taking these mental constraints off. Okay, so first of all, just rotating and then going to a flex position, flex posture. You'll notice I'm just stomping the feet a little bit, keeping it dynamic, and then rotate. Then step away and just imagine you've got a club in your hand and just explore that rotation. Then put a club in your hand and have a play around. So we're actually affording ourselves the movement necessary to swing, and we can expand on this a little bit now. Start to make it a little bit bigger and go into a finish. And just recognise how much you can actually rotate when the brakes are off. Throw away those stabilisers, the training aids, things like this. I'm not saying they're a good thing or a bad thing, but they are a form of constraint. Just be mindful of how they're constraining your action. Really, we should be using training aids and swing exercises which are affording us an opportunity to explore. So essentially they are disrupting the system. They're not trying to stabilise the system. They're not trying to put stabilisers on and make us feel stable and secure and, oh, this is a great move and I get a bit of success and it's kind of, oh, and I've hit 50 great shots out of 100, good percentage, I'm happy with that. Yeah, what about the other 50? What happens when we change the constraints? What happens when you're on the golf course and there's wind and there's slopes, and how does it form then? The body actually organises itself through necessity, through disruption. If we create instability, the body starts to reorganise itself in a very stable way. That's the essence of what a training aid should do. It should challenge the body, it should challenge you mentally and physically to create a movement solution, and that solution, that will become hardwired because you've created the solution, and it's that solution that you need to develop. That becomes deeply embedded, but also becomes a start point. That becomes essentially a platform for you to develop the rest of the movement from. So we've got to explore this ability to regulate. To do that, we have to differentiate, and differentiate means you have to explore your movement capability, and that's starting with this exercise here. This is a form of self-awareness that we're able to explore and recognise what is our best swing, what's the best movement for me to make the most effective, efficient swing for me. Taking the shackles off, moving, exploring space with a very simple exercise which has no constraints. That's a blank canvas. There's no way that one piece of information can suit everybody. And so we've got to take that on board when we're actually watching a video and thinking, how do I filter this? How am I going to take information from this video and go and apply it in a way that's meaningful for me and giving me an opportunity to go and develop and get better?